Namaste. A very warm welcome to the session. Today, we are having the last session from the special series on the Four Austerities as given by the Mother. The title of today's talk is How Thinly Should We Spread Our Love? I'll give brief introductions for our speakers. Dr. Ramesh Bijlani is a prolific writer and an inspirational speaker. He loves to use the gift of communication that he has received from the divine for dispensing small doses of love and wisdom from the inexhaustible pharmacy of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Once a professor at AIMS New Delhi, Dr. Bijlani is now a spiritual seeker at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Aditi Kaul is a dedicated proponent of integral yoga psychology. Her deep inquiry into the human experience, enriched by formal training in psychology, allows her to emphasize the importance of self work and conscious living practices in everyday life. Aditi offers online courses and workshops across various platforms rooted in the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Dr. Bijlani sir, Aditi, thank you so much for joining in today. Look forward to an enlightening session with you both. Over to you.
Thank you, Arunima. In this ongoing series on the austerities, we find that we have been moving in the expected sequence, talking about austerity in different parts of the being, the physical, the vital, and the mental. And then now we are moving to the deepest self, the psychic being. But then when the mother starts with this austerity, she starts with feelings. Now, why does she start with feelings? Feelings are the vital. So why should she bring it once again here? That's one question that arises. And on a little reflection, one realizes that that is because both the feelings as well as the psychic are non rational parts of the being. That's one thing they have in common. And therefore, when we do something, even when it is fully in light of the psychic, we say that it came from my heart. And heart is something that we use both for the emotional part of the being as well as for the psychic being or the soul. So we get this confusion because it is these are both non-rational parts of the being. We just feel like doing something. So the psychic also gives us a verdict, a guidance, which just makes us feel like doing something without going into any reasons. And it doesn't require to give any reasons because the psychic being is our divine essence. It knows all. And when you know all, then one doesn't need the crutch of reasoning and therefore doesn't go into that. However, there is a difference. The raw, unrefined emotions are infra-rational, whereas the psychic being is supra-rational. Both are non-rational, but it is the psychic being which is supra-rational. However, being a manifestation of the divine, the infra-rational part, that is the vital, the ordinary, unrefined, unpurified vital, is also capable of moving towards the perfection of the psychic being. It's capable of rising to the supra-rational level. It can approach it, it can merge with it can become one with it, and that is what unification is about. And, uh, and therefore, when we talk of the austerity of the psychic being, we are not really talking about the psychic getting restricted by our practice of austerity. The psychic being is our divine essence, should have a full play. We don't need any austerity there. But all the same, since it can be easily confused with feelings, the mother starts with feelings. Now, if the feelings are illumined by the psychic, then at least there should be no need for austerity. But then, once again, if one thinks about it, if there is one feeling which can give a full expression to the psychic, that is love. So, why then have other feelings at all? So, that's why she says that essentially the austerity, when we think in terms of the deepest self, that is the soul, and its dynamic aspect, the psychic being, boils down to austerity of love. But then, if love is such a noble emotion, on top of that, it is being inspired by the highest part of our being, the deepest self, the psychic being, then at least there should be no need for any austerity. Why should we need austerity in love, which is being fully illumined by the psychic? Uh, Once again, we find that there is a need because love is something which so easily can get mixed up with the ordinary human personality, which is ego driven, that just saying that love is a noble emotion, it comes from the psychic, and therefore I love all is easy, but it is not easy to practice. Because while it's extremely easy to say that I love all humanity, it's much more difficult to love a few real human beings. And then to love them in such a way that it fully reflects the light of the psychic. And therefore, when it comes to the austerity, when we keep in mind the psychic being, boils down to austerity of love. Love should, of course, be uh, there, but then love whom and how. That is what essentially austerity of love or the tapasya of love boils down to. So, with this little introduction, let me turn to the PowerPoint. One might say that if essentially it is love, pure love, which is fully illumined by the psychic, then it should be universal in nature, and therefore we can spread it out thinly over all humanity. And if we want to further sort of be particular, we can spread it out to all those who happen to be in front of us, to whom we can give something. Because love also needs an expression, it's not just a feeling. So the expression should be by giving what we have to whosoever happens to be around us, because to us, all are one. We are driven by that feeling of oneness, and therefore love should be thinly spread out. But then there are difficulties, and let's see what those difficulties are and why the mother has gone into considerable detail while talking about the tapasya of love. So, as in case of any other austerity, here also the essence remains the same. That is, austerity essentially means that we retain only the fewest and the best. Here, the fewest is just one. That is just one feeling, that is love, because it is just one, can't be any fewer than that, and it is the best feeling to retain. But then, love as a feeling is a double edged weapon because one major pitfall is that quickly gets uh, mixed up with the act of procreation. Now, why the divine has seen it fit to couple this noble emotion with the process of procreation is not difficult to understand, because procreation is something which is necessary. It is something important for the continuation of the world, and it also involves difficulties, hurdles, and hardships. And anything which involves difficulties and hurdles and hardships and so on is something which we will do only if we are strongly motivated to do it. And what motivates us strongly is our feelings. And since now this depends upon the ego circle widening, instead of including just one person, it involves including two persons. Uh, this feeling which it creates is that of a oneness with at least one more person with which the person is willing to share everything, one person to whom he is willing to reveal everything. So, well, that's so far so good, but then it gets contaminated with ordinary human emotions. And when it does that, then it brings in other elements. Uh, Firstly, the ego circle apparently expands, but does not actually expand fully. And the person is focused on how much happiness I can get from the other person. And If both the partners are under this impression that we are able to get a lot of happiness from the other person and therefore feel that I'm in love with the other person, then all seems to be going well. But if one of the partners is not interested, then arises the difficulty. Then, say, let's take it that the girl is not interested, the boy is interested. Then the boy tries to persuade her, woo her, impress her, how much I love you. But then, when all that doesn't work, then he starts getting angry. He starts getting angry and tells her, why can't you see I love you so much? And sometimes this anger can go to such an extent that the person becomes violent, violent to himself, violent to her. Any of these things could happen. And that's why the mother says in this austerity of love that it's because of this that some of the worst of crimes have been committed in the name of the noblest of feelings, and that is love. Now, one might say that in such a situation, then what is the right way to love? The right way to love would be that if the person really truly loves the other person, if the other person wants to be left alone, she should be left alone. Because love means that you are interested in the happiness of the other person. If the happiness of the other person lies in being left alone, then she should be left alone. But on the other hand, what actually happens is that in practice, most of the time, is that the person can't overcome his ego and therefore he starts getting angry. And not only that, if it does not go as far as that, then at least some of the other things contaminate it. Greed, want to spend as much time as possible with the other person, trying to control the other person, uh, trying to have an exclusive relationship, which means if you love me, you can't love anybody else. Exclusivity comes in, and that then leads to jealousy and possessiveness. Now, all these things start contaminating the relationship. And therefore, love does not remain as pure as it looks. And that's why when there's that debate in Savitri between the god of death and Savitri, initially uh, god of death tried to dissuade her and dissuade Savitri from asking for back for Satyavan's soul, and by telling her that you only think that you love him, but in fact this is only a yearning of the flesh, and it will last only a short while till you find somebody else. But then she tells him that no, my love is not of that type, and so on. Well, all that goes on. But then love can get degraded to that level of being just a yearning of the flesh and bring in all those other uh, pitfalls which I was talking about a short while ago. Now, to prevent these short pitfalls, to prevent violence, outright violence, do rules help? Rules, in fact, do not help much. In fact, the more restrictive the rules, the more they are likely to be broken. We'll not get into this because the subject today essentially is not uh, relationship issues, it's something else. But then we can understand why, even in austerity, we not only need, why not only in case of love, even in case of love, we need some austerity. We also need a little deeper understanding of uh, how love should be, for whom the love should be, and so on and so forth. So there is scope for understanding this austerity of love or tapasya of love, although love is itself a noble feeling. But then, as in case of emotions, we saw that since it's emotions that can also make us do the best of things, love also doesn't have to be killed, it doesn't have to be crushed, it only has to be purified, and the highest purification will come from the psychic being. So that is what we need to do. And that's why, no matter how it begins, any type of love is better than no love at all. The idea is not to kill it, but to purify it. And that's what essentially austerity is about. Now, one way of looking at love is that it's essentially a power of union. There is attraction between two so that they want to become one. In fact, we are all one, but then that recognition is lost because our mental consciousness is a divisive consciousness. Ego is a dividing principle. And in a way, we can say that the attraction for someone of the usually of the opposite sex, which happens, is a step in the right direction, at least there is union of two. At least there are two persons in the ego circle. And then if come along children, then there are more. And it, in a way, is taking us towards the direction of union, which is what yoga is about. But at the same time, uh, there are drawbacks and pitfalls because the type of egoistic expectations which are associated with this entire process do not really make love qualify for something which is coming from the psychic being. So today we are talking in terms of the psychic love, and we'll see how uh, what type of love that is. So the result of linking it to procreation is that while love is a sublime force, it gets degraded. But then there is some refinement that takes place even in the ordinary world. There are other groupings that we tend to have, which means love is essentially a force of union. So it's a principle of union. And apart from the family unit, there are other types of groupings also which we tend to have, which bring people together, be it the neighborhood or the country or the clan or whatever. So those are other types of groupings which also tend to bring people together, are essentially expressing the same principle, same feeling. They're based on the same principle of union. But then, while all this is happening, it is done for reasons other than a social necessity, a political necessity, an economic necessity. But those groupings do not see in these groupings nature's plan behind the principle of love. Nature's plan behind the principle of love is to once again make us unite with the source, to once again uh, dissolve this ego barrier, uh, because the antidote to the ego is love. Ego is a dividing principle, love is a uniting principle. So the idea is to dissolve the ego through the warmth of love. And that is what the nature's plan is. But then when we uh, look at these groupings, whether it is between two individuals for the sake of procreation, or whether it is within the family for the sake of a social necessity or a responsibility or something which we feel instinctively driven to do, and other types of groupings which are because of various other reasons, economic or social or whatever, we are not actually looking at nature's plan behind this principle, which tends to bring us close to one another. Now, some are quite satisfied with things the way they are. That is, we may not see the nature's plan behind it, but they don't care what nature's plan is behind all these groupings. Whereas some are not. Among those who are satisfied with things as they are, again, there are two types. The type one are those who are the favorites of nature, which means they are quite happy with things as they are. Uh, they behave the way nature has constituted them, and they may have difficulties in that type of life, but then they somehow negotiate those difficulties, come out of them, and keep going through those waves of pleasure and pain, of joy and sorrow, of success and defeat in the process of love. So they go through all this, but for them, it is something which has to be negotiated because these are the necessities of life. But same time, they don't really have any inner life. They're not ready for it. They're quite happy to live at the ordinary mental level. Now, these are people whom one should never try to convert because they have not arrived in this world with the level of consciousness which will make them appreciate an inner life. Among those who are satisfied, there are others who are, in fact, thrilled by acts of love. So, whenever they act out of true love, which is self giving and of forgetting oneself, remembering or being conscious of the object of love rather than oneself. So, by self forgetting and self giving, they get such a thrill, they get such a joy which surpasses all other types of happiness that at that moment they are fully under the influence of the psychic. There's a unification of the being. The psychic has taken over the vital, which is our most powerful part of the being. The intellect or the mental part of the being has given reasons to justify it. The body is executing the action. There is a unification of the being. And this is such a blissful state that the person is thrilled by it. But then the person is not able to stay at that level all the time. And therefore, after that episode of unification is over, the person slides down again to the ordinary mental level. The result is that the person keeps getting these thrills, but they are short lasting. It's just a fugitive contact with the divine during that particular phase when they have achieved this unification. And they can see that such things are possible. They sometimes probably repeat them also because they can anticipate what type of blissful state they'll experience, but no, they don't feel that it is necessary or at least practical to live in that state all the time, to organize one's life around the love which emanates from the psychic being and influences the instruments, that is the physical, vital, and the mental. So they don't see any necessity for that. They see these things which will happen, keep happening, and keep giving them that blissful experience, which sometimes they may bring, invite by actually responding to the situation appropriately. But all the same, they're quite happy, satisfied. They're the satisfied type too. They're quite satisfied with this fugitive contact with the divine. So, with this, I'll stop here before we go to those who are not satisfied. For once, those who are not contented are the ones who are on the path of truly following the austerity of love. So, I'll stop here and pass on to Aditi for her reflections.
Yeah, we are talking about love, and I just feel it's the love for knowledge, it's the love for knowing and being that all of us come together in spaces like this, that something we can just experience more and just get that sense, because deep down, all of us understand and experience what love is. Like the two things that stood out for me when you were sharing, one is the power of union. And even when Mother writes about it, she says that love, in its sense, is the joy of identity, and its ultimate expression is expression of union. And even when you were giving examples of human love and relationship, somewhere deep down, all of us experience those relationships with that ultimate sense of that union, and it comes in various shapes and sizes in that sense. And we have so much like love for children, love for friends, love for family, love for partner. The core of it just lies in that I'm looking for identity. I'm looking for the joy of discovery, that maybe if I know other people, through that I will know myself. And most of the time we are not aware of it. That in essence, we are just trying to look for ways to love ourselves. Because in essence, we already have it. Loving the other person is just that field which we want to express that love. And that is the base from where the need for other comes in. It's like I really have something which I want to give, because it's in giving that I will become aware of that I have it. So that's the trick when we have that stories know that we look for love everywhere, but it's actually stored within ourselves. And every interaction in the world is a slight knock on that love that exists within. And in every relation, the more we recognize that, the more it makes us fall in love with ourselves. So if we understand that space, that every human interaction or every interaction in the world is making us fall in love and become aware of that deepest core within us. And that core makes life beautiful. But the human error which comes in is that the other person or the situation is making my life beautiful. And that is when the dependency comes in. That is when the hook comes in. That is when, if we withdraw that, the issue is that, oh, somebody's taking away the love. And there's cases and we have experiences, we have stories that if we can really find ourselves in a situation, in a relationship, then even if it exists on the outside, it doesn't exist, the love remains. And even we have those experiences because that is where we have met ourselves. And when we say that we have met ourselves, is the psychic love which you're talking about. that once I get a sense of the abundance, the expansion within, it might come from a human space. It might come from, oh, I got to meet this person, or I interacted with this person, or maybe I fell in love with a place. It necessarily not be just a person. It's just something which makes me meet myself. That is the essence of love. And if I can just get that sense, that frees me, because then I'm not dependent on the world becomes just a medium. So I can respect the medium, I can hold the space for the medium, but I can also let go of the medium, because I know that what I have is within me. And especially in that context, when you were talking about the satisfied type and the not satisfied type, somewhere with love comes also authority. So one identification is I'm identifying with the love within me. Another identification is which turns into possessiveness. It can be possessiveness for the partner, for the child, for even for, like, I can speak for myself, possessiveness turns for your parents. That as if now we have grown up, now we understand better. So I will dictate them what they should eat because I am concerned about their health. I should dictate where they should go because I know what is good because they're old. So identification with that also brings in possessiveness, because behind that it's fear that what if I lose them? Because with love also comes fear. So there's also a deeper understanding when we talk about austerity, that why do we need that discipline? Because we need that discipline to be very, very aware of the source of it, the expression of it. Because from that awareness is really that connection will come in, that really that acceptance will come in. So when I become aware of the source within, when I become aware of where I'm bringing it out, then I really become aware of, okay, what I need, what is the issue coming in, is the acceptance. And when the acceptance comes in is when the alignment comes in. So this becomes the unfolding of love in real time. That I really become, because usually with love, like I said, comes fear, comes insecurities, and in every domain of it. Because the core lies in that we have not discovered the art of self love. Because if we have not met that space which I was talking about, then I will only love with an expectation, as if the other party is removed, I will not find my way back home. So then I feel lost. So more lost, more dependency. So the more I define myself, the less dependent I am. And then the freedom comes in. And why this thought came in was also because when you spoke about the conversion part, because the moment I love somebody, I immediately feel that possessiveness and authority that, okay, now I'll tell you, I will make you right. I will make you better. And then you like to change things, change habits. And because all of us have a very different notion of perfection, like little tiny blocks of perfection. And we feel that our perfection is perfect perfection and rest is just work in progress. But honestly, it's the other, not the other way around, but the reality is that all of us are work in progress. So it's just that acceptance becomes the core of it. And most of us try to express love because holding love is very difficult. Because we are very small beings. Our inside capacity is not that much. So it's like if we are this much, if I experience, I really want to express it because I have not prepared myself to hold love. So because the intensity of purity is so much that I really have to work on myself to expand myself to hold love within me and to hold that love for people who are in my life and not get into that state of when you were saying about converting and changing and all of those things. So for me to hold the space for other people in the world outside, my inner capacity has to be like that, how we have those water tanks, no? Like how much liter water you can store. So the more you expand your storage of holding the capacity of love is when you can hold space for other people, that no matter what they do, they're jumping here and there, they're doing whatever, you still love them. So widening is that love, and that only comes from the psychic place within, because it's only the divine connection which you have with your own self gives you that vastness. No human love can give you vastness. Human love gives you a sense of a very outer union which has its place, but the source is the divine love. So if I'm able to increase my capacity here, then I'm able to increase my capacity here. So that discipline is not, I mean, I'm not saying not, but mostly the discipline is needed in strengthening this connection. So the more the clarity, the more the purification, the more the connect, then the byproduct of it is whatever I'm giving. So when I'm saying that, oh, I can love people, I can love how they are, who they are, because I'm connected to the source. I cannot train myself mentally by conditioning that, oh, I'm such a nice person, or oh, I want to be a good person, or I want to be a very morally right person. So, no, no, because the trick that comes in when you were also talking about self giving also comes with a lot of conditioning of sacrifice, especially like at least I have seen in the setup I have grown up. That self giving is like, oh, if I agree to what other people are saying, if I keep their needs before me, that means that I love. Because I have a notion of love means others' needs before you. It means that, and so at one level, yes, others' needs, because naturally, when you love somebody, you want to be there for people. But there's a very thin line between wanting to be there for people because you think you should be doing it, otherwise, something will be taken away from you, or being there from a sense of completion. So, expression of love or notion of self giving from a space of fear of not fitting into their expectation, or self giving in the space of because you feel already full. One way is that we have those stories that, like, for example, we often talk about the mother child relationship. So the mother is hungry because the child needs to eat. One is the mother is so full that she wants to give to the child. So there's that subtle difference which we experience in every relationship, any friendship. Like most of the love in which we like friendship love, we really want to be there for the person because we're like, we don't want to be alone or we don't want to be judged. So one kind of outer conditioning comes in the space of, I want my outer life to be perfect because deeply I'm scared to be alone. So I will give all the love like this to hold people. But when I'm really in that source, then I'm like this in the world. So even this can look like love, this can look like love. It's only my inner connect that can tell me if this alignment is in process, then I can just widen myself and accept. So these are the few points I wanted to touch upon when I took up from your exploration of self-giving union. So yeah, these are some of my thoughts. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. Uh, some of the gems that I picked up, as usual. Uh, One of the most important things you made was that one can love at the mental level in a way that resembles psychic love, in the sense that I know what all psychic love should be like. So I say that love should involve giving, so I will give. Love should involve giving unconditionally, so I'll give it unconditionally. And unconditionally, and I should be giving, if I give unconditionally, I shouldn't be judging, so I will not judge. But actually, I'm doing all these things, but going on expressing the love by giving only because I feel that that is the right thing to do at the mental level. The spontaneity that will come to the right way of loving will come only when you have the connection with the psychic being, when the psychic being is actually uh, motivating that love. Then all these things will come naturally. I'll not have to think that I should love in spite of what I don't like in the other person, because my love is supposed to be unconditional. So I've judged the person. I know what I don't like in the person, but still I continue to give only because I feel that is the right thing to do. Now, that is at the mental level. So I'm doing it partly to maintain at least a good image of myself to in my own mind as well as in the minds of the other person, and partly to we continue to possess that person, continue to control that person. So it is because of that that I'm doing it. So I think these are some very important points that you made. With that, I can continue with that discontented lot who are truly bound for an inner life, uh, what their attitude should be to love. So these dissatisfied ones are the ones who seek liberation from ordinary human nature. They realize the limitations of the ordinary human nature, including the mental part of the being, and they want to be liberated from its pitfalls. They want to be liberated from its restrictive attitudes. They want to be liberated from the uh, pain that it might bring. So they sort of want to be liberated into something higher, deeper, and wider. And that is where they find that their mission of life lies. And that is where they can see the true liberation from the pain and suffering, the conflicts and difficulties of ordinary life. So they seek liberation, and they have not only a personal salvation in mind. In integral yoga, they also want to hasten the creation of the new race, the new human race. They want to contribute to it. So the advice for such people, which the mother is giving here, is that these exceptional souls, they're not too many. Most of them are the ones who will be dissatisfied ones, at the most quite content with that occasional thrill, which keeps sort of uh, keeps them enthusiastic about life, as well as keeps injecting those repeated doses, booster doses of bliss when they indulge in those acts of self-giving, when they have that unification of the being. So these exceptional souls must reject all love that is between human beings. For however beautiful and pure it may be, it creates a kind of short circuit and cuts the direct connection with the divine. Now, when the mother is saying that they should reject all love that is between human beings, uh, this can have some qualifications, as we'll see. But then this is an important point, that however beautiful and pure it may be, that is the love between human beings, it creates a kind of short circuit that cuts the direct connection with the divine. So it acts uh, in a way that creates a sort of a short circuit. I think it's difficult to find another figurative expression which will explain it any better. Uh, so the human love, especially when it is beautiful and pure, can easily uh, prevent or short circuit the direct connection with the divine. Now, what are the impurities of human love, which are inevitable unless uh, that love is purified by the psychic flame? The impurities of human love are that it's relatively petty, smallness. It's full of egoism, all the anger, jealousy, possessiveness, exclusivity, and various types of egoistic demands. They come because of this egoism, which is normally associated with the human love. And darkness, that is, it can easily lapse into something uh, vulgar, ignoble, violent, and so on and so forth. And it's a bargain. That is, it's a give and take. Ordinary human love is a give and take, and giving does not go on beyond a point unless one gets something in return. And it also is a struggle for superiority and authority. That is, one feels entitled to control the other person if the person is giving love. And even in the best of circumstances, even amongst the best of people, there is a extremely high probability of misunderstanding, sensitiveness, friction, and misgivings developing. And this is something which we can relate to because most of us have experienced human love and these undesirable aspects of the so called love. But when it comes to love for the divine, one finds that all other love, that is human love, love between human beings, seems insipid, dull, and feeble in comparison. And if it goes beyond all human love, no austerity is too hard for it, which means reducing the love to love for the divine is something which should not be hard if we realize the joy, the bliss which comes from love for the divine. And why does that happen? You grow into the likeness of that which you love. Now, this is something which anybody would observe in an ordinary human behavior, that anyone whom you love, you grow into the likeness of the person, partly because of intimacy and contact, partly because of imitation, uh, partly because of identifying with the other person, but you grow into the likeness of that which you love. And this is often seen between partners. If they live together for 50 years, uh, they have not only changed in many other ways, they've also changed in a way that they've started resembling the partner. If therefore you want to be like the divine, love him alone. And essentially, the path of yoga is uh, to be like the divine. As Sri Krishna tells Arjun in the Gita, Man mana bhava, be my minded, be like me, think like me, be my minded. So, if one wants to be like the divine, then one of the corollaries and probably one of the relatively easier ways is to just love the divine. Why I'm saying easier is because there are many paths to unite with the divine, but then the path of love, the path of bhakti, although it has its difficulties, is in a way one of the relatively easier ones, requiring nothing except giving yourself completely to the divine, placing your life entirely in the hands of the divine. That's what it requires. So you grow into the likeness of that which you love. If therefore you want to be like the divine, love him alone. Now, here's a little food for thought. If human beings are loved as manifestations of the divine, does it become loving only the divine? Because do we have to love the unmanifest divine? Do we have to love the divine in the form of a picture, an idol, a guru, or can we actually love real human beings, treating them as manifestations of the divine, and see the divine in them and love the divine in them? So, with that, I stop here, and I'm sure Aditi will have some beautiful things to say in relation to this food for thought that I've just given you.
Yes, I don't know if I have beautiful things to say, but I surely have some love to offer. And yeah, we were talking about union, and from there, when we were speaking about the other one, the one which, the ego tells us, yeah, yeah, this one is what all of us are, discontent with life, looking for more. So I saw, like, when you were speaking about impurities of love, how those are very evident in our exchanges. And especially from that same sense, this is where I feel that self becomes very important. That recognizing your own, because the whole yoga, like especially because we are talking about the context of integral yoga, is about knowing yourself, is about understanding those deeper layers. When you were talking about the types, what struck me was also that all of us are at different layers of existence, and we are in different path and different spaces. And in every space, there's a place for love, the way, the expression, the experience. And especially, even the positioning, when we talk about psychic, we are like somewhere centered here. And you said that mother spoke about the feelings first in love. And the feelings are usually in the clutches of the lower impulses. So it's like feelings are right here. There's a possibility that they are like really taken by the lower. There's a possibility that they are governed by the mind. And there's also a possibility that we can link it to the inner. So these are the options available. And so when we are really practicing that discipline at a very practical level, it's like, am I judging the feeling because it's really going in the hands of the lower impulses? Am I really feeling superior because I'm going in the mind? Or I'm just feeling love for the sake of love because I'm able to bridge this, bridge the deeper aspect with the expression aspect. So this is the domain which really brings in focus on our own self. But the error then comes here is that we might also get self-consumed on the way. That, I am walking the path of yoga, or I am on the journey of self-discovery. So somewhere I become superior. Somewhere my way of expression or my way of handling life becomes the right way of handling, even though it is still work in progress. So that is also one of the impurities. So impurity is not just in the way of what we're talking about, it's also the way how we perceive it. And that is where, again, I keep repeating the aspect of self-love, because the moment we start walking the path, the moment when you said about the food for thought, that it's that we are loving the divine in other people, it's also first, can we learn to love the divine within ourselves? Because the moment we walk on the path of self-exploration, we are filled with self-judgment. Because when we are trying to purify ourselves, we first meet the impurities within us, and how the love within us can hold the impurities in the higher light, can offer, like when mother says that, offer everything to me. You don't have to hide anything from me. You don't have to bring the good image in front of me. Just bring everything you have. So even to articulate that for your own self, that I hold jealousy, or I hold anger, or I hold any lower impulses, that itself needs a lot of love for your own self. It's very easy to say that love others, be non-judgmental, all of those things. I can be extremely judgmental about my own self, like, and then say that, oh, I'm not judgmental about the world. So the whole domain of this discipline starts from having that space to really see and offer the impurities within, so that the path gets cleared. So when I'm in the first half, you were talking about expression, experience in the world. This source, the impurity. So it's really like that water pipe that's so clogged within, that really that divine love will be pouring in it and cleaning it, so that then the love can come out. So most of the space when we are talking about this discontented lot is because we are upset with our own self, that the world outside is not making sense, the relationships are not working, be it parental, whatever outside. Inside there is not, like, there's a sense of it, but there's no direct communication, so we are lost. So really bringing that, how hard it is to accept your impurities and offer them, that is the actual discipline. To remember, in every discovery I made about myself, do I have the ability to offer it to the highest in me? And in that offering, because then love becomes a process, love becomes a practice, then it's not just a state, it's an act of living, it's an act of giving. So once, like in the previous section, we spoke about self-giving. It was more towards the world, but how much of myself can I give it to the divine is how much I know of it. And knowing in itself is a tapasya. Because we know how the moment we see something, we shrink, that no, no. So just widening, but not attaching. That there's no sense of attachment to it, but taking all its responsibility, that it exists in me, but I'm not attached by it, or I'm not defined by it. So that space is where we really need divine love for that. We can't, human beings don't have that capacity to do that without divine love. So all we can do is keep calling, keep calling, keep calling, and just fill ourselves. Like our discipline, our focus is more of how much can I be ready to receive divine love, and then the human love will take care of itself. I don't have to really go out into the nitty-gritties of human love and correct things that, oh, this is not right in me, or this is not right in the other person. All my focus is that how much am I looking like this? Because if I'm receiving in all sincerity and all truth, the rest will be taken care of. So if that practice I'm able to hold, like that is the core. Because usually, just one more point that's coming to me is, when we talk about the impurities and the human aspect of it, it's also because when we talk about human, we're talking about our surface nature. Like when we're talking about the yoga term, we're talking about our mental, vital, the physical. And all of these have their certain characteristics. So if I'm engaging with any person through that, so for example, I'm looking for a mental compatibility, or it's more of I'm connected more with the feeling aspect. There's so much love, there's so much of, this the emotional expression. Or when I'm purely talking about the physical, so there's a sense of attraction. So if these characteristics of my surface nature become my guiding force to engage with other people, more often than not, they will fade away beyond a point, because nature is ever changing. And that is why after some time we realize that, okay, there's no mental compatibility, or there's no physical attraction, or there's no same emotional compatibility, because we're ever evolving. But if there's a sense of meeting from the core, because I've met the core within, I can't meet people from a space where I've not been. So if that strengthening is the base of any relationship, then the outer can be handled. So if I'm in that space, then it's easier. But if I'm only exchanging on the outside and trying to cover up, it's like if I'm in the house, I'm only trying to decorate and make my living room perfect because that is my understanding. But if I know that there's something beyond that, there's a deeper layer of my existence where I receive what is like the inner life, which we call in the path of yoga, if that becomes the meeting place, then the surface becomes very easy to handle. Then, if I have those impurities, I have the source from where they can be rectified, where they can be worked upon. So, the possibility of working on any situation, any relation, in any context comes when the core is in the picture. But if there's only surface to surface, then there's friction. And then, of course, so, and that can only be possible when my inner and outer are connected. So, in that sense, there are three ways which we can look at the love aspect of it. One is my inner and outer, the connection between them. Then the connection, the divine and my inner, and my outer and the world. So these three have to be in alignment if you're really looking for that psychic expression, the integral expression of love. When all these three come together, that is when it's like really when we say no, A is equal to B is equal to C, A is equal to C. So if my divine and inner is connected, my inner and outer is connected, the outer and divine. So there's direct connection, then my life is set. And then I can actually experience love in its fullest. Like even when I'm saying it, there's so much of joy and expression because it's such an expansive feeling of being like the direct expression. And that's what we call in yoga, that the whole idea is to be that instrument of the divine. But that requires a lot of work, and all of us are working in our own capacities. And this is the time for me to be quiet. So, yes, over to you.
Thank you, Aditi. Again, if may start from where you more or less left off. Uh, what's important is that when we have human love, whether it is love for oneself or love for somebody else, because these days self-love is something which we are talking about so much. But then self-love is not love for the oneself in the outer form as we are. Self-love is love for our deepest self, which is again, uh, in a way, love for the divine. So we love the best in ourselves, the highest in us. That is self love. And when we are loving another person, in that person also we are loving the same. We are loving the highest in that person, which means that it is not because of the outer form. The outer form could take uh, two sort of ways in which love actually, for human love, translates into practical expression. One is when you find that you have a matching level of consciousness, so that you are able to energize each other, send positive vibrations to each other. That's what Gary Zukav calls spiritual partners, or people who have been in the same drama company. I'll not elaborate on that. Uh, Once they have been in the same drama company several times in other worlds. So that is one type of love. But again, it's because you are loving the divine in that person. The other type of expression it finds it that it may not be your spiritual partner. It may not be because you belong to the same drama company or you are at the same level of consciousness. But then this is a person who is offering you an opportunity to give something that you have, and this person needs it. Say a student for a teacher or a patient for a doctor. I mean, these are situations in which uh, there's no need for that matching consciousness. But then again, one is doing it for the divine in that person. So if one can see the divine in that person without judgment, that is, without judging the level of that consciousness of that person, then one can express it, and express it with that quality which will avoid those human pitfalls of human love. Uh, David Marshak uh, has coined sort of his own terminology to distinguish between two high levels of consciousness. One is what he calls postmodern consciousness, and another is what he calls integral consciousness. And the distinction, he says, basically is that in the postmodern consciousness, the modern world was essentially a rational world. So postmodern is which has gone beyond rationality and once again is seeing the beauty of the supra-rational subjective uh, element. So that is the postmodern consciousness. So everything is right with that consciousness, except that this people with that level of consciousness retain a sense of superiority, that we are one notch above the rest of humanity. Whereas in integral consciousness, even that sense of superiority disappears because you feel that we are all on the same journey. We are all works in progress, and uh, the other person may not be at that level today, but will be at that level maybe in one of the subsequent lives. And we were also not where we are today. We were at a much lower level in some previous life. So there's no fundamental difference between us and others. So when you realize that, that is what he calls integral consciousness. So this again, I can turn to the last few slides. So when it comes to austerity, uh, the tapasya of love, essentially what Mother says is love only for the divine. And what are the steps through which one can love only the divine? The steps are firstly that replace love for others by a wholehearted, unchanging, constant, and egoless kindness and goodwill. So it's not that you stop loving others, but the expression changes. The love is wholehearted, not calculated, not is something which easily sort of withdraws. It's wholehearted, unchanging. It does not change because of uh, what the other person is doing, not doing, and so on and so forth. It's constant and egoless, avoids all those pitfalls which arise from the ego, and is expressed through kindness and goodwill. This would apply to love for friends, family, etc., all the types of human love. Then expect nothing in return and leave all judgment and protection to the divine. So, totally non judgmental, and do not expect anything in return, not even protection. Then seek pleasures and joys only from the divine. Do not expect pleasures and joys from the object of love, the object of love in the human form. Seek help and support only from the divine. So, once again, these can be expectations, pleasures, joys, help, support, none of these expectations. Seek comfort only from the divine. These are elaborating the expectations, expect nothing in return. So, what all you should not expect? Protection, pleasure, joy, help, support, comfort, none of these. Expect all these only from the divine, not from the object of love in human form. In short, the austerity of feelings consists in rejecting all emotional attachment of whatever kind it may be, whether for a person, for the family, for the country, or any other object, and concentrating exclusively on the attachment for the divine reality. One of the uh, major sort of pitfalls of ordinary human love is attachment. So, all attachment of whatever kind, it can take various forms, of whatever kind for the human object of love should be rejected. But at the same time, it's easy to reject an attachment if it is replaced by attachment to something deeper, higher, and something which does not have those pitfalls. So, uh, it's easy to overcome an attachment only if it's something lower is getting replaced by something higher. So it's not really rejecting the attachment or sort of abolishing attachment, but it's attachment to something higher, and uh, that is what is replacing the attachment for something lower. You know, in this picture, you find that type of attachment between Sri Krishna and Sri Aurobindo when he was in prison, and he felt that Krishna's arms were protecting him and looking after him, taking care of him, even when he was in those difficult circumstances in the prison. In those dirty blankets, he could see Sri Krishna's arms around him. So essentially, tapasya of love, when it comes to like all tapasyas or austerities, retaining only the fewest and only the best, only one feeling that is love, only for one object of love, and that's the divine. And how about human love? Transform it so that you are loving the divine in the other person and giving it those characters. Now, if one does that, can it retain the same intensity? Now, here Sri Aurobindo has said something interesting, that psychic love, that is love which is fully illumined by the psychic being, can have a warmth and a flame as intense and more intense than the vital. Only it is a pure fire, not dependent on the satisfaction of ego desire or on the eating up of the fuel it embraces. It is a white flame, not a red one, but white heat is not inferior to the red variety in its ardor. So it can have that same intensity, but it is free from those impurities which arise from the ego, which I have talked about so frequently today. So those impurities it is free from, but the intensity can be the same or even more. And we know that the white flame, in fact, is hotter than the red flame, but at the same time, it does not consume the fuel that it embraces. All these four austerities that we have talked about, uh, today was the last in the series, are in the collected works of the Mother, volume 12, chapter 8, pages 48 through 71, and it has been also published in many other compilations, including Sri Aurobindo and the Mother on Education. So, Aditi, you have the last word.
We can just see if people have any reflections to share with us. So yeah, over to you. It's just that I just got stuck in that space when you showed the picture of Shrabindo and Shri Krishna. So that was like the real representation of what we need to do and what path we need to follow. And words are like, less the words, better it is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bijlani sir. Thank you so much, Aditi, for this enlightening session. And we are really grateful that you shared your deep insights and wisdom with all of us during this special series. Participants, if anyone has got a question or if anyone wants to share something, please go ahead. You can drop in your messages in the chat box or you can raise the hand, unmute yourself, and speak up.
I'll just share the takes from today. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. So, as long as we are seeking validation from outside, from others, um, so we remain unhappy. So, we cannot be happy. And so, I like the fact that you should go inwards and find your true nature and true qualities. That will stop making you seeking outer approval and love and things like that. And the second one was purpose. That if you have a higher purpose, then these small purposes of life don't really, I mean, they shed off. So those are two beautiful takes from today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Preeti, for those comments and reinforcing some important points that emerged from today.
We have some words of appreciation and, of course, thank you notes for both of you.
Can I say something here?
Of course, sir, please.
It's like, it's a wonderful session, very powerful insights, but just a reflection, like in uh, in practice, there are always expectations, you uh, be it with your partner, with your family, with others. So, and there's no point to make others unhappy. So maybe we try to make others happy, going maybe going walking a mile longer, maybe trying to make them happy and comfortable, going out, not really reflecting what actually we like to do at that point of time. That's one which comes to me. I think that's a formula we follow in everyday life, to be in harmony with outside. And the other thing is, which comes to me, is that maybe I just lost my thought. It's something occurred to me, but maybe mother doesn't want me to share that anyway. Yeah. So okay, now I remember, like, understanding, like, yeah, whatever we seek understanding with others. If we maybe in the workplace, in the family, with friends, if it is not there, you try to make one understand, because to be in harmony, but that doesn't happen. Now it is difficult to get things done if you have to with egocentric persons who is not open and receptive, and but still you have to, I mean, that's a practical aspect. We have to get along with them. So seeing divine in them is fine, but then getting things done, getting together, working together in harmony is really where the challenge comes. And sometimes there has to be some diplomacy also, what things to be said first, what next, so I think those things does occur, in practical life. Yeah, just reflection. Yeah. Maybe Aditi or Ramesh Bhaiya, if you'd like to comment on that, how to handle it.
I'll just share what came to me while you were speaking. It's just that the more complexities in human existence and expression, the more the strength that develops between the divine and the human. The whole idea when we come to especially Sri Aurobindo's path is that the more we are practically in life in exchanges with the world, the more our seeking gets strengthened. So I have more complexities, I offer myself more. So if I have to have day to day more entanglements, more connection. So this path gets more and more concretized the more I express and face difficulties in life. So that alignment comes between my relation with the divine and my expression with the human. And this becomes a very, because human mind tricks us, no? It brings us in the sense that no, this is not possible, or this is difficult. As long as I carry the idea of divinity, I have problem in action. The more I experience the divinity, it flows through my actions. And that makes my journey very yogic in its truest sense. And another thought that came to me was in the aspect of when you were saying no giving, and before that we were talking about validation and expectation. Of course, it's human to have expectation, but it's divine to let go of this expectation. So I can't not have expectation, but what I can do is offer my expectations and not let them come in my action. So it's a very egoistic understanding if I say that, oh, I love this person, but I don't have any expectation. I am a human being. So first aspect of love is to accept us as being human and having all those things which human beings have, but then offering them. So the second step makes it a practice, not not having the first step, because it's important to recognize the limitation of human existence. So of course I will have expectations. And just one last thing which came to me was that say when I'm saying that I want to love or I love, I don't have expectation or I don't need that sense of validation. We will have all of those things on the outside world, but there will be a parallel world, parallel life that is getting strengthened, and my strength will come from there. So my experience can still remain at the human level as far as I'm going, but the connection will help me navigate them. And what will happen as a result is that even entanglements, even human interactions, there will be less of residue, and less residue, less recall, less entanglement. And that will purify my process with human interaction. So if I have a difficult situation, I will face it and I will let go of it. There will be less of carryover effect because I live with the divine. If I live with humans, more of entanglements. If I experience humanness and live there, then life is a joyous process. And in even if you remove the joy, life is a process, and we will figure out the joy part. So yeah, that is all I want to speak today. Over to you.
Yeah. How about expectations of others from the self? I'm not talking about expectations of the self from others, but
So
the
the
other.
divine in you will receive it, not the human in you. When the human in you receives the expectation, you feel responsible. When the divine in you receives expectation, they know the solution. So it's just what in you is receiving that will tell you what to be done about it. So it's just that shift of receptivity. Just experiment it and see what it brings out to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aditi. Dr. Bijlani, sir, would you like to give any closing comments?
No, I
No,
don't
sorry,
really
I
have
just
anything
no.
substantial to add. I think Preeti is saying something.
Yeah, sorry, Abhijit Bhaiya ne abhi pucha. He just asked about others' expectation from us. So this thought came to me that the other person is also going through a journey in this life, and it might be a learning for that other person also to learn to not to expect. So we should allow that to also happen. I don't know if that makes
Just thinking of one thing which the mother has said, which is important. Sometimes we feel that uh, just because I understand this whole thing well, it gives me a right to uh, treat the other person with as much frankness as possible. But then there's a dividing line between being frank, being sincere, and being forthright and being rude. What she said is that there are no circumstances whatsoever which justifies being rude. So one can be sincere and truthful without being rude if one can see the divine in the other person and also have a good understanding that we are all perfectly imperfect.
Thank you, sir. Before we close today's session, I would like to inform that the recording of today's talk and all Yes Talks are published on the Yes Spirituality YouTube channel. Please do visit the channel and explore content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like psychology and wellness. Thanks once again, Dr. Bijlani sir and Aditi. Thank you so much. And we thank the participants as well for being along. We'll close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.